and you collaborate. That's what diversity is. And I think people miss that. It is only about gender. It is only about race. It is only about ethnicity when we all have so many different diversity traits.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
All right, pilot. Well, listen up. Do you hear it? That is the sound of the hustle and the bustle at the OBAP conference. I am actually doing a special podcast interview with the president of the Latino Pilots Association, Claudia Zapata-Cardone. And I practiced that like 10 times so I could say it, and I pulled it up in front of me and wrote it down so I could see it. I want you to know that their expo is coming up on September 15th. And the reason I am releasing this so early and just like, it's even, it's not a standard podcast, but I want you to know that this is an upcoming expo. If you are in the job hunt, if you are wondering where to go to plant yourself in your aviation community, this is a great opportunity for an intimate setting at the Gaylord Hotel in Kissimmee, Florida. And if you are on that southeast side of the world and it's easy for you to get to Orlando, you should go because there is great opportunity. Claudia is awesome. She is a captain at a major airline. And I do want to give a special shout out to United Airlines and Scott Kirby and to Justin Ritter. They're the head lead sponsors of the Latino Pilots Association. Hats off to them. They're awesome. You guys enjoy this episode. You're going to hear the background. You're going to hear the noise from the floor, but I wanted to record this and I thought it was important for you to hear. So you guys are awesome. Keep crushing. Keep your inertia. Let's go. And last but not least, let's have a quick word from our sponsors because without them, we wouldn't have this awesome podcast. Hey, pilot, it's Nick. I want to tell you about a great friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. He's a financial planner and he's completely focused on the professional pilot. He's the kind of guy you want to go to for real talk to help you figure out your financial future. With so many upgrades and so many transitions and so many things going on, you owe it to yourself to give him a call. He'll help you design and execute really smart financial planning strategies, whether it's retirement planning, investment management, military transition, tax planning. He's a great financial planning partner. Timothy P. Pope, CFP, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. Give him a shout. All the information's in the show notes. You should definitely tell him I told you to call. Hey, pilot, welcome to the podcast. I am really stoked. We are, first off, before I do a little introduction, we are currently at OBAP, the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, and we're sitting on the floor, and I have a good friend with me from the Latin Pilots Association, and I'm going to totally butcher her name, so I'm going to ask Claudia to please introduce herself, and please say it, because I can't do it.
That's okay. My name is Claudia Zapata-Cardone. I currently live in Denver, Colorado.
You live in Denver. Can I guess who you work for since you live in Denver?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So we won't tell anybody, but it's a great place. So you are the president of Latin Pilots Association. Can you tell me what the mission is and what your organization does and what it's all about?
Absolutely. So in 2015, approximately, 5 friends realized that they didn't have an organization that represented them. And they went to Jacksonville State University. And so they formed the Latino Pilots Association. And this organization is here to mentor and inspire the next generation of Latin aviation professionals. We've been very busy these last few months. We're planning our first ever expo. It's going to take place on September 15th. And that is next month in Kissimmee, Florida at the Gaylord Palms. Right now, it is a one-day event for the expo, and it's very similar to OBAP. All of the major airlines are going to be there, and there's going to be some on-site interviews with some of those airlines as well. But it is a 3-day event. So the night before, we're going to have a welcome reception that's sponsored by Southwest Airlines and Destination 225 for the Latin Pilots Association members. That's going to go on from 6:30 to 9. And then on Friday, September 15th, which is the first day of Hispanic Heritage Month, that's why this is so important to us, because it is on the very first day of Hispanic Heritage Month that we're having our first ever Latin Expo. And that's going to go from basically 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Very similar to OBAP as well. We're going to have some events that are not part of the expo. So DEI panels, scholarship panels, military panels, other organizations that are going to be making presentations throughout the day for our members and anybody else attending. And then on that Saturday, us and the Kissimmee Airport, we're going to have a LPA food truck fly-in event at the Kissimmee Airport.
Let's go.
Oh, absolutely. So Latin food trucks, lots of airplanes that are going to be flying in, little mini tours of the Kissimmee Airport. And that's going to go on from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we're really excited about this event, our first ever event next month. LPA, we have $775,000 worth of scholarships.
Ooh.
That our application window just closed on July 31st for some of those scholarships. I mean, we're here to break down financial barriers to the piloting profession. That is our main goal. As we know, it is extremely expensive to become a pilot. And we're just trying to make that change where we remove those financial barriers for an underrepresented group. Because obviously for us, most underrepresented groups, it is a little bit harder to get that money to achieve those dreams. So we're doing our part to try and help our community get into the aviation industry.
So much to unpack there. Oh my gosh. So long story short, 1 day of interviews.
Of the expo, yeah.
Expo, walking around with the cool swag, doing the meet and greets, seeing what the different vendors have to offer, what they're selling to the pilot that they need. I heard somebody today tell me that this is a buyer's market.
It is.
And I love that statement. And
because for so long, we were selling ourselves.
oh my gosh.
We were begging and pleading for anybody to take a look at us for so long. And you're right, it's a buyer's market now. I mean, we can put ourselves out there and we'll be snatched up pretty quickly.
Yeah. And this is, first off, Kissimmee, Florida, y'all, is right next to Orlando.
Yes.
So you're going to fly into Orlando. You're going to brave the stupid train that takes people back and forth to the terminal. It's the worst airport in America. But once you get out of there and you get down to the Gaylord, which is how many water slides?
Three water slides.
This is
That's what sold me on the hotel was
So
3 water slides.
It's the first part of the meet and greet is water slide
Yes.
conversation. But it's going to be an opportunity. This is an intimate setting. This is not a major convention center that is 12 million square feet.
Correct.
And so you are going to get access that no other organization is able to offer with this intimate setting where every airline is going to be there, but the opportunity to interact more personally is beyond anything that's out there right now. If you are thinking about what convention I should go to and how it should be, right now your most bang for the buck is happening in September in Kissimmee.
It is. If you're an LPA member, our convention's $99.
Man. Okay, so I'm a white guy from Western North Carolina.
And you are welcome to our event. We
That
want
is
you at
cool.
our event. So I think a lot of people shy away from some of these events because they'll say, oh, it's women in aviation, or oh, it's Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. They don't want me. But that's not what diversity is about.
Right.
Diversity is inclusive of everyone.
Right.
We all have different diversity traits, and I think that's what gets lost in the message sometimes.
Yeah. If you could zoom out from where we're sitting at America, right now we're in New Orleans, and there's a very specific population that lives in New Orleans. You zoom out and you get to Louisiana, you zoom out and you see the Southeast, and you zoom out and you see the Eastern United States, and you go to the entire United States. That look at what America is and what the world is, that's the customer base that we're serving in aviation, because it's a global job. Even if you're just flying out of your local airport, it is still a global job. So having perspectives of variety that can serve those customers makes those customers spend more money so that you can continue to have your job. And so
Correct.
that's important, 1,000% important. Because if you were in another country and you didn't even speak the language, like there's no way you could keep that company going. So
Right.
having that diversity, just being an American, being a global citizen, right?
Correct. You've said it perfectly. A lot of people will say, oh, well, great example is that you have students that go to UND
Yeah.
and they're taught at UND.
And it's cold.
And it's very cold. I would never go there in the winter.
God bless them.
Absolutely. But you are taught at UND and you are taught to solve problems in a certain way. And so you get a group of UND people to look at a problem and they're going to solve it the UND way, right?
That's so good.
Okay. Let's go to Western Michigan. That's another aviation school. They're taught the Western Michigan way. So they're going to solve that problem. But then what happens when you get UND, Western Michigan, Middle Tennessee State, Purdue, Embry-Riddle, Auburn, Florida Institute of Technology, FIT. What happens when you get all of them in that group? And one says, hey, well, this is how we would solve it. It's like, yeah, but that's actually not going to work for this problem. Hey, at FIT, we did it this way. And you collaborate. That's what diversity is. And I think people miss that. It is only about gender. It is only about race and it's only about ethnicity when we all have so many different diversity traits.
Yeah. This is also why I don't have a television, because I'm tired of people telling me what I should think about all those things.
I know. It's terrible.
Yeah. I actually also probably benefit from having a dad that's an immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though he's European.
But you had that immigrant experience, though, and that's a universal experience amongst immigrants because my parents were immigrants as well. And that's a universal experience we have. Even though it's not from the same country, we still have that.
Yeah.
That unique perspective.
Yeah. So good. Gosh, it's so good. I love it. You're awesome. Okay. I want to talk to the young person that's listening right now.
Okay.
That wants to be a pilot.
Okay.
That I did grow up with immigrant parents and they had no money. And it's hard to afford that. How do you go down the path? How do you open those doors? The person listening probably fell onto this podcast by some random way. And they're listening, they're hearing a president from a huge organization talking to some guy, but how do you turn that into actually like becoming a pilot and really making it happen?
So this is the wonderful thing about these organizations such as Women in Aviation, OBAP, PAPA, Professional Asian Pilots Association. That's what we're here, opening those doors. So quick story, when I was young, my dad worked at the airport. He worked at Newark.
Okay, so you grew up out in New Jersey?
I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Cool.
And we were lower middle class. We had a roof over our head. We had food on the table every day, but we couldn't afford those little luxuries like my dad going to the cafeteria to get food.
Right.
So my mom was a machinist, a tool and die maker, and she would come home, would make dinner. We would go and drive to the airport when my dad was working and take him dinner. And I got to sit in the back of the car and I would watch airplanes take off and land because back then, this is pre 9/11, obviously. I'm dating myself like way pre 9/11.
We're the same age. Come on.
Well, there was a chain link fence and I could see where my dad's office were because he worked in cargo. I used to see the airplanes take off and land. But I didn't think it was a possibility for me. We had never seen a female pilot.
Oh, because you were a girl.
Yeah, because I was a girl.
Yeah.
And we had never seen, certainly not a Latino pilot or a Latina pilot, unless we went on Bianca, which we did one time to go visit my family down in Colombia, South America. And so I didn't know it was a possibility. And even back then, and I'm actually going to bring these the encyclopedia set to the LPA conference because people are like, you could have looked up like all these women. You could have done that and you would have seen yourself. And I want to show them that in the encyclopedia set that I had, Amelia Earhart is literally 7 sentences.
Wow.
In the encyclopedia.
Wow.
And this was, of course, an encyclopedia set in 1984.
Wow.
So if you didn't know what specifically you were looking for, you didn't know how to find that information. So we're talking the 80s and 90s. Now with the internet, you can find that information so quickly and it's that exposure. But even though we have that exposure, and even though we have that internet capability now, people still need to see people that look like you in order to believe if you can see it, you can be it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reach out to the younger children in those elementary schools and in those middle schools and in the high schools so they can see people that look at them and know that it is a possibility, that this is a possible career path. And you have to do that through outreach. It's almost the only way you're able to do that is through outreach. And we just don't have enough volunteers. We need to have more boots on the ground volunteers going into those schools and showing those children that this is a career choice. And it's a lucrative career choice. So circling back, it's access, is removing those accessible barriers, whether they're mental barriers or whether they're actual physical barriers. So we start there. So how do you become a pilot? You start joining organizations like this that have these youth programs, and you become active in those organizations. The money part, I'm really hoping that now the only way to overcome that financial barriers is through scholarships. I'm hoping some way, somehow in the next few years, we figure out another way of financing this, whether it's the airlines pick up the tab once they hire you and you work for them for a certain amount of time and they agree and they pay off that student loan debt, because it is really, really, especially with the interest rates now, it's really crushing.
I think that you and I should try to find out who the pilot for Carlos Slim is. The world's richest Latino, right?
Yes.
It's like cajillionaire. And we can get him to give a ton of money to help with outreach and getting kids interested in flying. And
absolutely.
So if you're listening to this and you fly Carlos Slim around,
send them to us.
Podcast at spitfireelite.com. Send them over to me and I'll chat with them. And then Claudia will hit them up for a couple bucks. I think that's what we do. I think we just fixed it.
I think we did.
Gosh.
I think we did. Wouldn't it be amazing if it did reach somebody and they said,
I guarantee you.
Billionaires and be like, hey, aviation, aerospace. And like, I'm talking about just the piloting profession, but just the aerospace industry in general.
Yeah.
Getting those children interested in STEM, getting them interested in the future is going to look like.
Yeah. It only takes money. And this job, the guy and gal listening to this podcast right now, the person in the back of the plane can afford to give that. And so hit them up. Let us know. We're happy to do it.
Absolutely.
I mean, honestly, that is a great way to fund stuff. All right. So I want to talk about the scholarship. We've closed the window for this year's scholarships, but this is a time to start planning for next year.
Absolutely.
What kind of things are the scholarships doing? What are you looking for? How do you apply? How do you become relevant? And is it all who you know? Is it that kind of thing?
So no, it's not all you know, because otherwise it would just be going to the same people over and over again, correct? We don't want that. And so what I would tell people right now is start working. We don't have our scholarship application window. That doesn't mean you don't write it the night before and submit it. You can tell. You can tell when someone just threw something together the night before. Get letters of recommendations, and they can be from other pilots, but you know what? Letter of recommendations really make a deep impact as if you volunteered somewhere, a preacher, a pastor, a priest, a school teacher. Those people that are in your lives day in and day out, those are really impactful letters of recommendations. And what we want to see in our scholarship essays, passion. We want to know that you have the passion and the drive and the aptitude to do this, because not everyone has the aptitude. I don't know if you were a flight instructor many years ago.
Well, I barely have the aptitude to begin with. And so let me pause real quick and say, if you're listening, Claudia just said you need to be volunteering. You need to be giving more than you're taking.
Right. You need to be giving back. You need to be giving back to the community. So those people will be giving you these letter of recommendations, and the passion needs to come through. When I talk about aptitude, and the reason I asked was because I remember I could never be a doctor. I know this of myself. I see other people in pain. I see other people hurt. If I see an open wound, I get very queasy to the point where I'll have to lay down somewhere. I don't. So when I was a flight instructor, I had a couple of doctors they were amazing human beings. I mean, one was a surgeon. I mean, I couldn't do it. and they didn't have the aptitude to fly. So sometimes people go in there thinking like, oh yeah, this is what I do, and they don't have the aptitude, and then they get really down on themselves. And it's like, no, it's not where you belong right now. This isn't your calling, and that's okay. That's fine. But there are so many different avenues in the aviation industry. But when you're specifically applying for a flying scholarship, I need to know you're going to have that tenacity, because you're going to have setbacks. We all talk about our successes. We never talk about the failures. And sometimes they're not big failures. Sometimes they're little failures that you have to overcome. And I'm talking about tenacity and resiliency. Be able to pick yourself back up off the floor and continue. So my story, and the reason I'm always very big on the tenacity, I was going to a flight school prior to 9/11, and it went out of business. And I lost a majority of my money with that flight school.
Ugh.
I had to continue working. At the time, I was a flight attendant. I continued working as a flight attendant. I worked as many hours as I could, put money aside, would get my tax return check, and then I'd get another rating.
And you make no money as a flight attendant?
I worked for a major carrier, so it was not that bad. It wasn't as bad as like some of the regional flight attendants. They don't make a lot of money, but so I was able to put food on my table, have a roof over my head, but squirrel that money aside and get another rating. And I would never recommend anyone do it that way. Why? Because when I would go back, it'd been so long from the last rating that I would always spend 5 hours just getting familiar with the airplane again, getting my landings, getting my sight picture down, and then finally getting into whatever rating I was getting into. But I didn't stop. I didn't quit. And that's where you have to have that drive, where you have those setbacks, sometimes major setbacks, sometimes little setbacks, but you have to have that drive and that passion to be able to overcome them.
Being at this convention, I love going to the conventions. It's probably one of my happiest places outside of being with my family. And it's actually really hard to leave my family to come to this convention. And God bless Anna, my wife, and letting me come out. But yesterday, a young man came up to me, and he's facing a situation where he can't get a job, and he is having trouble finding his way to finding resolution to be able to fund his flying career, his dream of flying. And I took a second to just encourage that guy that it seems like a long way, and you may not be able to get it all done at once. And the tenacity that you need to dive in on it, it will make you love your dream more, and it will make it more worthwhile. And you can't give up on that, because if you do, then you just live in regret.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You do live in regret. There was a few times where I quit flying, where I said to myself, I quit flying. You know, I would just say, this is too difficult. I can't do this anymore. And I would still save money, but I would just say, I'm not getting another rating. And it was such a huge sense of loss every time I did that, because I would just grieve the dream, like grieving that loss of that dream.
Yeah.
And then I would go back and get another rating. And you have to encourage them, and you have to encourage them to keep applying to scholarships to find a way to fund this. And it's difficult. It is difficult. Again, if we can get these billionaires to give us a call, I think it would solve our problems.
Yeah. I think $100 million would solve it. And that's a stroke of a check. Let's go. Yeah. Carlos Slim, I'm calling you out. I was a military aviator.
Okay.
And I was a helicopter pilot. And I didn't love flying when I was doing it. When I was flying, I liked the Navy job. It was really cool, but it was harder, a different kind of flying than I think the civilian flying world is. You're really sweaty. A lot of the planes don't have air conditioning, and it's hours and hours of studying. It's hours of briefing. It's hours of preparing for briefs. And by the time I got out of active duty, I was over it. I didn't want to get in another plane. I didn't want to do this. And it took me damn near a decade to get into like the point where maybe there is a hole, maybe there is something missing, maybe I don't feel fulfilled, because I worked in consulting and started a business and all the things. But once I got back into it, I was like surrounded by an appreciation for the gift that it is to be able to have this job and to be able to go fly. Because I spent a decade in a cubicle. In a room with no windows. And I think that being able to understand that this is more than just a job, right? It's a way of life. It's a part of who you are. It's part of your soul. I think preaching that to people more like, you don't get it at first, right?
Yeah.
It takes time to understand what it really is. It's funny like that.
Mm-hmm.
But switching into with this organization, I think that you get to that point of appreciation faster because you're around people, like-minded people, people that encourage, people that are, if you're like our buddy Trevor, right?
Yes.
I didn't even know he was part of LPA. And he's like, people don't even know I'm Latin. I'm like, oh my gosh, man. Like, I didn't even know you spoke Spanish. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it just, the ability to come together and the ability to celebrate each other's victories, it just raises you up faster and makes you more part of that organization. And have you seen that in your membership?
Oh, absolutely. We celebrate everybody's little victories. And I mean, it can be anything from, hey, I did my first intro flight to, hey, I did my first solo. And we put that on all social media because it's so important for us to celebrate these things and to lift each other up, because there'll come a day where you won't have that little victory. And again, we talk about those failures. We have to overcome them. And we are here as a community to lift each other up, and not just to lift up the Latin community, but to lift up the African American community, lift up the Asian community. We are here to lift each other up.
Yeah. Picking somebody up once they fall, like they stub their toe, like it is what it is. Be an honest person, be a person of integrity, and just keep moving forward and keep your inertia going.
Yes.
Right? It's kind of my thing is. And with that, when you have a group around you, that energy is an exponential wave, right? So I mean, it's
because you have basically 1,000 people pushing you forward.
Yeah.
When that happens, you're almost unstoppable.
Yeah. That's the beauty of your organization. I see it on my LinkedIn all the time. You have the little flags on the picture, and this person just celebrated this thing, and there's a jillion people commenting and resharing.
Congratulations and resharing and reposting. And the important part of that is that flag of where you came from.
Yeah.
Because that's that visibility. Seeing someone that's like, oh, wait, they're from Costa Rica. I'm from Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Oh, they're from Ecuador. I'm from Ecuador. They're from Colombia. I'm from Colombia.
Yeah.
And that's that little spark that ignites that flame.
Yeah. I love bicycle racing, and I love watching the Tour de France. And one of the things you always see are all the flags of the people. And as a former bike racer, you know, like the ability to see somebody that is from where you are and like wants you to succeed. There's just so much motivation in that. And it translates so well into this aviation community.
It does.
We also need way more pilots from Ecuador and way more pilots from Costa Rica and way more pilots from everywhere.
Absolutely.
So if you know somebody that has Latino background
or not, join us. Absolutely join us.
It's a cool place to be. It's a fun place to be. All right. What are the dates again for the conference?
Okay. So the LPA Latin Expo is going to be from September 14th through September 16th. On the 14th again, it's going to be basically a social hour that's being sponsored by Southwest and Destination 225, and it's for our LPA members. On September 15th, on the very beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month, our Latin Expo opens. And again, a lot of vendors, a lot of airlines are going to be there doing on-site interviews, offering conditional job offers. We have the gala that evening. That gala is from about 7 p.m. until late at night. And it's there that we're going to be awarding the scholarship recipients from that first round of scholarships that just closed July 31st, where we're going to be awarding them. I believe there's going to be some CJO offers at the gala as well.
Let's go.
And then, it's going to be great. It's really funny. It's just so embarrassing. So I DM Bad Bunny on Instagram, and I'm like, hey, we're having this first ever expo.
Oh my God.
Why don't you come and talk to us or something? And I never got a response back. I thought it was I'm like, I'll shoot my shot, you know?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Say no or not respond? Well, you didn't respond, but.
Come on, Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny's pilot probably listens to this too.
Probably. I hope so.
Man, come on.
That'd be awesome.
Oh my gosh.
And then on the 16th, we're going to have that Latin food fly-in at the Kissimmee Airport, and it's in conjunction with the Kissimmee Airport, the Utilities Authority, United Airlines as well. So
Is United a big sponsor?
United Airlines is our title sponsor, so they are the top dog at that.
Shout out to Scott Kirby. Shout out to Justin Ritter.
Absolutely.
You guys, way to go sponsoring an awesome organization. And So I'm certain if you want to get in front of United, if you want to meet Justin,
Yeah.
then that is where you need to be.
Yes.
And if you have another airline that you are targeting, that is where you want to be.
Yep.
If you want to meet Corey Glenn, go there. If you want to meet Eric Hendrick, go there. If you want to meet any hiring person at an airline or regional,
Yep.
let's go.
Absolutely.
Claudia, this is awesome. Thank you for spending time with us.
No, thank you, Nick. I really appreciate this.
I will see you at the Gaylord on the water slide.
Absolutely.
You're awesome.
We're there.
Hey, before you jump out of here and go on to the next podcast, can I ask a big favor? Would you mind going over to your app that you're listening to this podcast on and give me a review? Give me a 5-star review if you love it. Give me a 1-star review if it totally sucks. Put a comment in there, something that is helpful. It helps me. It helps get the word out there. It helps people find the podcast, and that's super cool. If you don't do that, maybe you could just share the podcast with a friend. Tell a buddy who's trying to figure it out, trying to sort out this pilot dream of theirs and get a little bit further. That is super awesome as well. Last, if you don't do either of those two things, how about this? Find a way today to make yourself 1% better. Do that thing that you've been putting off. Put your foot forward, make movement, get yourself going, get that inertia that you need to succeed in this industry. So that's your choice. Leave a review, tell a friend, or make yourself better. Either way, it's all a good choice. And I'm super stoked you're listening, and I will see you on the next episode. The statements made on this show are my own opinions and do not reflect, nor are they under any direction from my employer.